Listen, the more you learn, the more you earn. Welcome back to another YouTube video. My name is Sabali Freeman, and today I want to talk to you guys about my first year at the University of New Mexico. I'll talk to you guys about what that transition was like coming from a smaller university to a bigger university, why I chose the University of New Mexico, and ultimately just the classes I took and how did I do in those classes. So, going back to Highlands, that is the college that I started at. I did 30 credit hours there. And the college for me just was a stepping stone just for me to really play catch up. Um, I kind of talked to you guys about how I dropped out of high school and, took 7 years off of school. So I went a really, really long time with no schooling. And then even when I was in high school, I really wasn't the best student. So, going to Highlands was, just for me to go play catch up. I didn't really know what I wanted to do yet, but I just knew I had to, get into college and just start taking some classes. And while I was there, I just pretty much took some basic classes. And I did part time as well. So I just took two classes at a time there. So after I did my 30 credit hours, that's when I ended up transferring to the University of New Mexico. Now, I really picked a school just off of location. I felt like I was already, really familiar with the city of Albuquerque. I really wasn't interested in trying to move out of state. I wasn't trying to be, away from my parents like that. I think New Mexico is a really boring state. It's not really much to do. It's not really a nightlife here. However, that's really good when you're trying to, stay focused. I think if I would have went to college in another city where there was a lot more to do, a lot of nightlife, I think I would have definitely gotten distracted easy, and I don't think I would have really did as well. So I just think going to college here in New Mexico was just perfect for me. Even when I went to my orientation at the University of New Mexico, I could tell that it was just a really good school for me. Definitely felt like it was a great fit for me. It's a lot of great people here, great professors. It's a lot of support here. So I just think that it was a school for me. The only other school that I did consider in state was New Mexico State. However, it was just really, really far. It's all the way in Las Cruces, which is south of Albuquerque. It's about, I want to say, maybe 3 hours from Albuquerque, and where I was living, I think it was like 3.5 hours, 4 hours. So definitely a lot. I've never been to Las Cruces, so I wasn't interested in trying to get acclimated to being in a new city as well. I definitely wasn't interested in that. So ultimately, I just said, you know what, UNM is that's the school for me. So I ended up transferring there, and the transition was definitely a lot to get used to. Much bigger campus, a lot of people, bigger classrooms, and just harder courses. The courses are definitely a lot harder, more fast paced than those of at Highlands University. So it was definitely a lot to get used to, especially when I first started. The first semester was definitely a lot, just trying to meet people, find classes and everything. But after being here for a year, I kind of realized that it's really not that big of a campus. So it just seemed big when I first got here. So now I'm going to talk to you guys about the classes I took and how I did in those classes. So my first semester, I just went throughout the whole year. I took 17 credit hours. So that might sound crazy because some people take 17 credit hours within one semester, right? So what you have to also understand is I am an adult. I do live on my own. I do work. I still have to pay bills and things like that. So when you're in college as an adult, you have to make sure that your work life and school life is balanced because you can't work too much to the point where you're spending so much time at work you can't study and do your homework. And then you don't want to take too many classes to where you can't work like that. The more classes you take, that's going to pull in so much time and energy from you. You're not going to be able to really work like that, and you still got to pay bills, you still got to pay rent, you still got car notes, car insurance, things of that nature, right? So, going part time, was really all I could handle at that moment of time. And if you're going to go full time as an adult, you definitely have to make sure that your finances and everything is just right, because you don't want to be stressing about finances and everything while you're stressing about trying to get an A on the exam. You just don't want that, right? So part-time was really all I could handle, this first year here. So um, first two classes I took 6 credit hours. I took macroeconomics and I took survey of physics. Now, if I could go back, I definitely would not have taken those two classes. I would have took intro to chemistry, intro to biology. Being a biochemist major, majority of my core classes are biology and chemistry classes. And with that being said, you know, I really didn't have a good foundation in biology or chemistry. And whatever I learned in high school, as far as biology and chemistry, I completely forgot it. I don't even remember anything that I learned. So I pretty much had no foundation. And I think looking back at it now, it would have been smarter had I taken the intro to chemistry, intro to biology. And I'll get to why in a minute. But to stay on topic, these two classes, survey of physics and macroeconomics, I did really, really well my first year. Survey of physics was a great class. I really did enjoy it. It's just kind of touching on the surface level of physics, so it's not really diving extremely deep into it, but it's just touching on the surface level of everything, and just kind of breaking you into what you're going to be getting into. So it was a great class. It was a small, very, very small class, surprisingly, but great class. I enjoyed it. I finished with an A in that class. Macroeconomics was also a really good class. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed learning all the different concepts. It was new information for me, so I think that class was difficult just because of that. A lot of it, all the terminology and everything, was really new to me, but it was really fun. I enjoyed, just kind of learning how the economy works from a financial standpoint. I think that's really important that everybody should know that, how it's functioning and all those things. So it was a great class. I finished with an A minus. I was definitely trying to aim for an A. But that class was a little bit difficult just because it was new information to me. And the exams I think is what kind of killed me the most. The exams were worth a really big portion of your grade, and yeah, at the time, there were some things that, I really needed to work on as far as test taking that I wasn't conscious of. I have a habit of passive reading when I take exams, and at that time, I just really wasn't conscious of it. And on top of that, I think at that time I was studying to memorize instead of trying to study to actually know the material. And so I think that ended up, kind of hurting me in the end. But nevertheless, an A minus is still really good. So I'm not going to beat myself up over an A minus. It's a great grade. Majority of students didn't get an A minus. They got C's and D's. So, when it's all said and done, I'm still proud of myself. Still very happy with the A minus. So, yeah, my first semester went really, really well. Second semester, I took Gen Chem 1 and I took intermediate algebra. Now, with intermediate algebra, that class was like a walk in the park for me. I really did not have to study at all for any exams or anything. We had homework due every week. We had quizzes online, and then we had, I think, about 4 exams plus a final. So, yeah, that class was a walk in the park for me. I took my ACT a couple years ago, and I really studied extremely hard on the math section. I studied for a year just to kind of bypass, all the prerequisite math class that they were going to try to give me that I felt like I just really didn't need. So I was trying to obtain a certain score on the ACT so I could kind of skip out of those classes. And I studied extremely hard. I had over 500 flashcards. I had 3 math notebooks or 3 books that I ordered off Amazon. I took a math course on Coursera. You name it. I really did everything that I could to, make sure that algebra was ingrained in my long-term memory. And so when I took that class, I still remembered everything. I still remember linear equations and parabolas and hyperbolas and roots and radicals and you name it. So that class was really just really easy for me. So I really just didn't have to give that class too much time, attention, and effort. So I finished with an A in that class. And because I didn't have to give that class too much time, energy, and effort, it allowed me to take that time, energy, and effort and put it into chemistry, which is what I really needed. Now, chemistry, Gen Chem 1, I really struggled in that class. That class was extreme. And earlier I said I wish I would have took an intro to chemistry, intro to biology. That's why. Because I have no basis of chemistry. I had no foundation. And coming into a Gen Chem 1 on a college level with no basis was pretty extreme. That was definitely really, really challenging for me. I struggled a lot. The class gave me anxiety. Um, yeah, it was just a really difficult class. It was, difficult trying to keep up with some of the concepts, trying to learn everything. The pace of the class was really, really fast. And you really just didn't have no room to fall behind. So time management, that was kind of difficult trying to manage my time, and I was still working. I had just moved to Albuquerque. I'm still trying to figure out my work balance with my school balance, and there was just a lot going on. So I really don't think there was too much I could have did better in that moment in time while I was taking that class. I think getting a B, because that's what I ended up getting. I got a B out of the class. I think that was just the best that I could have did at that time. I don't really think there was nothing else I could have really done. Just given my academic background, I think, a B was definitely a really good grade. A lot of kids, didn't make it out of that class. I saw as the semester went on, the class got smaller and smaller, smaller and smaller. Um, so a lot of kids really didn't make it. So I think, a B was a really good grade to get. They even say 30% of students who take Gen Chem 1 for the first time fail. So, I think I did really well, but it was extremely challenging. I did struggle a lot in that class. So I got an A in intermediate algebra, a B in Gen Chem 1, and then I took a lab as well. I got a B plus in the lab. I really am not a big fan of labs. For it to be 1 credit hour, it is a lot of work. And yeah, it's just kind of something that I don't look forward to. But I got a B plus in the lab. So with that being said, I ended up taking Gen Chem 2 in the summer, this summer. Now, I was very, very skeptical of taking this class in the summer just because of how much I struggled in Gen Chem 1. Um, and I wasn't sure if I should take it. Now, the only reason I was considering taking it is because you need Gen Chem 2 before you can take organic chemistry. And for whatever reason, organic chemistry at this college is only offered in the fall. And if I didn't take Gen Chem 2 this summer, I would have to take Gen Chem 2 in the fall, but then I would have to wait next year, fall 2026, before I could take organic chemistry. And that would have just completely pushed my degree plan back a lot. I am trying to graduate in 2028. And even with that pushback, I probably still could do it, but it just would have been really, really tight. And I didn't want that. So I talked to a few TAs, a couple people who had already taken Gen Chem 2, just to kind of see, I asked them, should I take it over the summer, just to get their opinion. Pretty much everybody said no. Right? Everybody said no, you don't want to take it over the summer. You want to give yourself 16 weeks to learn that, blah, blah, blah. I ended up talking to my mom about it. She said, look, go ahead and take it, bust it out. Give yourself something to do this summer. Keep your brain working. That way you can stay on top of your degree plan. Just go ahead and get it done. It's not going to be that hard. So I ended up listening to my mom. And, sure enough, I did really, really well in Gen Chem 2. I finished with an A minus. And yeah, I did extremely well in Gen Chem 2. Gen Chem 2 I found a lot funner. It was definitely more interesting, and just some of the concepts that they talked about. And it was a great course. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot more than Gen Chem 1. I just really felt like Gen Chem 1 was all over the place as well. 1 minute you learning just basic chemistry, then you go from that straight to stoichiometry, which I think was the craziest jump ever. Then after that, you bouncing around with redox reactions, then you going from gas laws to orbitals, and it was just a lot going on. Whereas Gen Chem 2, I felt like you learned more in a linear fashion. Everything just kind of, flowed off of each other, so I really did enjoy Gen Chem 2. Gen Chem 2 was a lot of fun. And then I took a lab with that as well, and I finished with a B in a lab. Definitely think I could have for sure got an A out the lab, but I think overall um, my mindset with taking labs just wasn't that good. I definitely had a negative mindset about it, just because it's a 3 hour class, and it's a lot of work for 1 credit hour. You know what I'm saying? So My mindset just wasn't there. I think if I had a better mindset going into it, I think if I took it more serious, I for sure definitely think I was capable of getting an A out of the Gen Chem 1 lab and the Gen Chem 2 lab. But I think ultimately my mindset just kind of got the best of me. But nevertheless, it is what it is. I think overall, my first year at University of New Mexico was really, really great. I really enjoyed myself at this college. I had a 4.0 at Highland, so moving to this college, I definitely wanted to try to keep that up. Unfortunately, I didn't. I finished this first year with a 3.6, which is still really, really, really good. It's still a really good GPA, still high. I try to really want to keep it at like a 3.5 or higher. So, I wanted to stay at a 4.0, but unfortunately, that's just not the case. It is a tougher college. The course load is definitely a lot harder than Highlands. So, but nevertheless, I'm still very proud of myself. Proud of myself for, just sticking to it and staying committed and just working hard and not giving up. I'm really proud of myself, given my academic background and, just where I came from, I think, I have a lot to be proud of. So, and I'm definitely looking forward to, the rest of my academic career here. So it's been a great first year, and I really enjoyed myself. And yeah, I can't wait to see what else this college has to offer. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you learned something, and I will see you all on the next clip.